Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Peter, we've discussed how much rents have increased. I think it's something like 12% across the country last year alone. Some of this hearing seems to be an attempt to blame institutional landlords for these, but it's been pointed out by Mr. Griffith what a very, very small percentage institutional owners own in the housing market. But it's also important, I think, to note that rent's gone up a lot. Housing prices have gone up even more. All right, I think as of November, year-over-year prices, according to FHFA, are up about 17% nationally, much higher in some markets, lower in others, but 17%. And so I guess my question is, I would tend to expect that renting a house, which is, let's face it, that is a substitute for owning a house, that they're going to tend to move together. So let me ask you, Mr. Peter, over the medium term, let's say, should we expect housing prices and rental rates to generally move roughly together and in the same direction?
Yes, Ranking Member Toomey, you are absolutely correct. Over the medium term, we would expect to see home prices and rents to move in lockstep. And for the reason that you pointed out, those are near substitutes. However, over the short term, there can be discrepancies that arise, and those discrepancies can arise because many investors are landlords and mom and pop shops who generally only tend to raise rents when there's a turnover. Right. And there's generally about a lag of about a year between rents and home prices, so we're going to see a lot more rent rises in the future. Right.
So there's a sticky element because people are locked in a given lease. So, there's a very old economic truism that the solution for higher prices is higher prices. And, of course, what's meant by that is that when people see the opportunity to make more money because price of something has gone up, it brings new entrants into the market. They create more supply. That tends to reduce the prices, and thereby you have a solution. So we've also heard that a lot of folks have no place to move, which sounds like a supply problem. And high prices normally call for an increase in supply. So could you talk a little bit about why we're not seeing a huge surge in supply in the face of these rising prices? And specifically, are local governments partly to blame for this?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a common saying that demand responds quickly, supply responds slowly. And in particular, on the housing front, the reason why supply responds so slowly is because we have artificially limited what and where we can build. And this comes down to the mistaken notion by elites that they can produce better outcomes than the market. And so they have used zoning, they have used environmental review processes, they have used urban growth boundaries. In some instances, they have used rent control in some cities to really slow down what the market has been doing. And this has resulted in this massive housing shortage and massive unaffordability that we've been seeing. And this is very much more pronounced in these high regulation states.
Right. Let me go to Mr. Griffith for a quick thought here. So the GSEs clearly led us into the 2008 financial crisis through excessive risk-taking. Congress established FHFA to be a tough regulator to make sure that never happened again. But rather than being the cop on the beat, it seems the Biden administration's intent is to turn FHFA into a co-conspirator with the GSE. And what we're seeing is all kinds of policies that undermine, I think, seem to undermine the GSE's financial condition, whether it's reductions in GSE's capital requirements, lowering G fees, suspended restrictions on risk layering, and on and on. Here's my question for you. Does it ever feel like they could be setting up for repeating the mistakes that led us into the 2008 financial crisis?
Thank you, Ranking Member Toomey. Well, regardless of whether or not the current state of the housing market completely mimics what happened in 2006 with the collapse of home prices of 30 and 40% across the country, even if that does not happen, the pain that the GSEs are inflicting on the American families, it's undeniable. And by that, I'm referencing the home prices that are at all-time record levels right now. Whether those prices collapse or whether they stay elevated, American families are severely impacted. And the only way to have a way out of this without a even more prolonged period of sharp contraction would be to gradually remove their footprint to allow prices to gradually return to something that is more affordable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Toomey. Joining us from his office is Senator Menendez, and after Senator Menendez, I believe, will be